Welcome back again to the Messy Cook. It is canning season, and today we are going to make a zesty peach barbecue sauce. This is in the Bernardin canning book, so if you're looking for this recipe, or you can just follow it here. So you have 6 cups of finely chopped pitted peaches, and at the right now the peach season here in Ontario, so we want to grab those. We're going to want a cup of seeded red pepper, red bell pepper, 1 cup of finely chopped onion, 3 tablespoons of finely chopped garlic, 1 1/4 cups of liquid honey, and I'm actually using, shout out to Pine Ridge honey in Ancaster. This is honestly, it's just a backyard place. It's an older couple that owns the property, and these are absolutely the most amazing honey I think I've ever had. So that's what we're going to use today. 3/4 cup of cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire or Worcester sauce, whatever you want to call it, 2 teaspoons of hot pepper flakes, 2 teaspoons of dry mustard, and 2 teaspoons of salt. And basically, you're going to prepare your canner and your jars. So you do that ahead of time. Make sure everything's washed and sterilized. I've already got mine done. And then you're going to take basically all the ingredients and you're going to put them in a heavy bottomed pot. You're going to cook it when it comes to a boil for 25 minutes, ladle it in for the 1/2 inch head space. You're going to process water canner for 15 minutes. So I'm going to get all these things ready, and I'll show you when we get the process started. Okay, so I showed you the recipe for the zesty peach barbecue sauce, so we're going to get things prepped here. So I put a pot of water on to boil. So what we're going to do is we're going to blanch the peaches to get the skin off. So I'll show you that process in a short little bit. I'm also going to get everything else prepped and in the pot here. So I've just washed this pot up when doing another recipe. So I'm just going to make sure the water is out of there. So what I'm going to do is add all the ingredients in here. So we'll prep the peaches. They can go in at the end, but everything's going to get cooked in the same pot. So we'll take care of that when we're ready. So I'm going to go through the recipe here. I will chop up the peaches, the pepper, the onion, and the garlic shortly. This calls for 1 1/4 cups of liquid honey. I did have to melt this a little bit because it did harden up a little bit, but that's okay because we're going to be cooking this, so it's going to cook it down anyhow. So let's just scrape off all the good bits and pieces. We don't want to lose any of that. I'm just going to scrape this out. There we go. So there's 1 1/4 cups of honey. Liquid if you have it. If not, the regular works. Just melt it in the microwave. Works just as well. So there's our honey. Get my measuring spoons out here. We're doing 3/4 cup of cider vinegar. You know what? I'll just use the same measuring cup. So make sure you can see everything here. Not too well, but there we go. So I'm going to do 3/4 cup of cider vinegar. And I think I might have just enough. So we're going to measure this up. So I hope my head's not in the way. 3/4 cup of cider vinegar. That's going to give it a little zing. So we're going to put that in. There we go. 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, Worcester sauce, whatever you want to call it. I'm using Lean Parents. Any brand will do. You don't have to have Lean Parents. Oh, just give it a little shake first. 1 shake there. I know it doesn't want to twist off, so we're just going to shake in a tablespoon, measure it out here, 1 full tablespoon of that, dribbled over a little bit, but I didn't get more than that. We're going to put in 2 teaspoons of hot pepper flakes. You can dry your own. If you have peppers from your garden, you can dehydrate them and do them. I have these ones in my cupboard, and they don't really go bad, so we're going to add 2 teaspoons of those. That's your zest for your zesty peach barbecue sauce. That'll give a little bit of heat. I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of dry mustard. Rinse that because I get pepper flakes in my hot mustard. I'm just using a little towel here. 2 teaspoons of dry mustard. You want to make sure this is level. Dry mustard does have some heat, so this is going to give it a tiny bit of a kick too. And if you don't have dry mustard, I suppose you could use maybe a couple tablespoons of Dijon mustard. That would work as well. And on top of this, we want 2 teaspoons of salt. And I'm going to just use the canning salt because I have it in the bag here. And I'm using up the rest of this a little bit before we get into a jar. I bought a large amount of it and have it processed in jars. But yeah, so 1 2 teaspoons, and salt again, as you all know, is a preservative. So got the water going. I'm going to set this bowl aside. Once that pot comes up to just a bit of a simmer, I'll show you how to process the peaches. In the meantime, I'm going to get the veggies ready, and we'll get these cut up. Okay, so I'm going to start. I'll do the peaches in a short bit. We want 1 cup of finely chopped seeded bell pepper. And I'm going to use that same measuring cup I measured the honey with. I haven't washed it yet, but guess what? It's all the same ingredients, so it doesn't matter. I do have a yellow bell pepper out just in case I don't have quite a cup with the red pepper. And hopefully I can get some from that. So we're just going to chop these all up. I'm just going to do very small little pieces. It says finely chopped, so what I want to do is something like this. So I'm going to continue. Let me show you how small I've got here. So finely chopped, about, well, they're all kind of stuck together, but you can probably see little tiny chops. I'm going to continue to cut this red pepper. We'll get to the onion, same thing. Going to be 1 cup of finely chopped onion, garlic, and we'll get to there. I'll show you when it's all chopped up. Okay, so I didn't have enough red pepper, so I used some yellow bell pepper, but you can use red, yellow, or orange. I wouldn't use green myself because green tends to have a little bit of a bitter taste. I'm also going to chop up a cup of onion fine. So I've sliced it in half with the core at the top, sliced down. I rinse them with cold water so the onion oils don't sting my eyes so much. And you can see from this side, I basically hold your knife like so. It gives you more sturdy. If you do this, it bounces all over. You don't want to cut yourself with a sharp knife. Dull knife is even worse. So I'm cutting these lines, as you can see, fairly small. So this is what we want to do. So I'm going to get around the edge here. We want to make sure they're small. The other trick you can do is slice through, not all the way, but down to, for the most part, to the other core. So that's going to make sure they're small. You want to dice these, like I said, a small dice, because you don't want, in a barbecue sauce, you know, a small tiny piece of onion is fine. I mean, it's a lot of it's there for flavor and will probably melt in anyhow, but you don't want a great big huge chunk of onion in there. Now, if you're not sure if you've cut them fine enough, the other thing you can do is just run through with a knife. But if you follow my instruction, for the most part they should be good. There are a few little pieces, so we're just going to chop those. I'm going to use that. Now the other thing too is if you don't want to take things off of your knife, that's a piece of skin there. I use a pastry scraper, and I find that picks things up really, really well. So we can add those in. I don't spill it the other side. And we're going to put the rest of those in. Not quite a 2 cups, so I think 1 medium to large size onion should be more than enough. So I'm just going to get this finished chopping. After this, we're going to add in my garlic. So we'll get to the garlic in just a minute. Okay, so I have 1 cup of peppers. It's supposed to be just red, but like I said, I did a mix, that's fine. And 1 cup of finely chopped onions. I'm going to add that in the pot with all of the other ingredients that I put in already. And I'm going to get the garlic going next. Give my hands a little rinse. And what we're looking for is 3 tablespoons of chopped minced garlic. So I'm going to use, I've got about 1 big clove here and 4 smaller ones. So we're going to chop those up and we're going to see how much that measures out to. Little trick I use when I'm doing chopped garlic is I'll put a knife on, big knife, and smush it down. What that does is it helps release the skin off the garlic. You can just trim the end and literally it just peels it off. So much easier. There we go. Everybody has a trick to garlic. Some people freeze it, some people throw it in hot water. I don't like that because then it just saturates it with water and you don't really want that. So again, that's it. Smush it down, give it a little whack, and what that does, you can see it splits it open, and boom, take all of your flesh out. That personally for me is easier. So if you're doing a jar and you want to keep a jar of this in your fridge, you can do this. Chop it up fine, cover it in olive oil, put it in your fridge. It'll last about 3 or 4 months, maybe less depending on how much you use. So we're going to smush those a bit more, and I'm just going to start chopping. Do a coarse chop, and then just follow through and continue to chop. Takes literally a couple of minutes, and you're going to get a fine chop. So you want real fine on this. The other thing you can do if you don't want to chop it, you're not, you know, you don't like chopping garlic because it makes your fingers smelly or whatever, you could probably crush it in a garlic crusher, garlic clove crusher, whatever you want to call it. And just as long as you're ending up with 3 tablespoons, although that kind of, I mean, lets a lot of oils out, which is fine, but I think crushing your garlic is going to make it probably a little bit smaller. It makes it more of a paste. So it's up to you, but yeah, do whatever works best for you, and that's great. So I'm going to continue to chop this to get this to a fine dice, and we'll measure out 3 tablespoons. All right, we've got this all chopped up, so I'm going to check and see. I think I'm going to have to dice a little bit more. So there's 1. Let's do this here. So in there, this is 2. So I think I'm going to have to get another couple of average size garlic cloves, and I'll chop off 1 more and add it to the pot of everything. All right, so chopped up the last clove, and I want you to see what I mean by fine. As you can see, oops, let me get my camera going there. This is very fine, so that's what you're looking for. And just run your knife through. The other thing I want to mention is if you do buy the garlic and you put it, you know, you get the stuff that's in the olive oil, don't use that for this recipe. You need to use fresh for this. The jarred stuff is fine if you're doing regular cooking, but you don't want to add that in to a canning recipe, as the olive oils and God knows what else is salt. It's going to offset the flavors, and you want to be sure that you're using straight olive oil. So we're gonna, yeah, that looks like this last little bit is gonna just fill that up. So we're gonna put that in. Yep. So I have 3 tablespoons. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna show you. Let's move this. That last little bit in. I'm going to show you what this looks like so far, and we're going to get to the peaches next, so I can show you how to process them and get them chopped. So you can see everything in here, all of our garlic, peppers, onions, honey, what else have we got in there? Cider vinegar, dried mustard, everything's in there. Salt as well. So I'm going to get to the peaches, and I'll show you how to process them. Okay, so somehow I missed the videotaping this, so I'll do 1 more to be safe. You want to take your peaches, you want to take the core out. We're going to blanch these for about 30 seconds. We're going to put a little X in the bottom here, and what that's going to do is that's going to allow the water to get a little bit underneath so we can actually blanch these peaches. Now I put these ones in a few minutes ago into some simmering water. I don't want to say boiling water. And then I've also have a great big batch of ice. I'm going to put some water in here, some cold water. Because blanching, basically, you're putting things in hot water to loosen the skins, as you do with tomatoes when you're doing stewed tomatoes. And then you're leaving them there for about 30 seconds in the boiling water. And then what we want to do is toss them into the ice cold water to stop them from cooking. Because basically, we don't want to have cooked peaches. We just want something where the skins are going to loosen. So I'm going to get one of these out of here. You can see. Ooh, that's very hot. Let me take this over here. I'm going to put it in the hot water. I'm going to show you what that does real quick, and then I'll have to get the other ones out. So I put that in the ice water, and you can see by putting that in, the skins literally fall off. So I'm going to get the rest of these out. So that's literally a skinless peach, and then we're just going to chop those up. So let me get the rest of these out, and we'll come back here. There we go. I'm going to get the ice water back. Putting them back in the water again, like I said, is just going to shock them. You want to make sure they stay underneath and stop that cooking process. If I do end up with too many, well, guess what? I'll just eat 1 for lunch. So that's everything there. I turn off the pot. There we go. We don't need the extra heat in the kitchen today. And we're going to come back over here. There we go. I'll move back a little bit and zoom in a touch so hopefully you can see everything okay. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, I'm gonna throw the skins that way. We're gonna pull these off one at a time, and should just peel off. So this one's a little bit stuck. She'll use an onion that's a little bit too warm. We'll leave that one. Might be a little too warm still. Basically, you should be able to just pull these off like So just pull all those skins off. If you do have a little bit of a difficult time, that's fine. Just use a paring knife and you can do that as well. Find out, let's see if I have one here. Sometimes when they're a little bit harder, not quite as ripe, you might have a tougher time like that one there. So I will grab my knife and help peel it down. So we're just going to continue to peel all of those, but for the most part, you can just literally slide them off with your fingers. So let me get the rest of these done. We'll get to chopping, and we're going to get 6 cups of those. I just want to show this to you one more time. So let's get the peach. I'll do it over here, trying to get the camera. There's your peach. There's the little X you put in the bottom. Literally, just pull off that skin. You can also go from the top corner, which kind of helps. Use a knife if you need. This one probably doesn't need a knife if you can catch it with your fingers. My fingernails are very short, so unfortunately I can't. Again, that's it. That's blanching and peeling. This is the same idea you use for tomatoes when you're doing stewed tomatoes in a jar. You're going to put an X in the bottom. Tomatoes, I generally take the core out of them. I don't do that with this. I'll cut the pits out in a minute. And then you just dice them up. So there's one more. I have 2 more in here, and we'll get these done and get to chopping. Okay, so I'm going to show you here. I've got all these peaches. What I want to do is I want to cut the round. These are nice and soft and juicy. So, and they're slippery, so be careful with your knife. And I want to twist, or even put my fingers in there to pull apart half of the pit. So you can just slide your fingers under there and pull that pit out. We just want to continue that with all of these. Now listen, if you end up with too many peaches and you have more than 6 cups, just put it in the fridge. You can freeze the slices for your freezer. These are pretty soft. Sometimes you can just twist the peach and it'll come off too. It's okay that it's getting a little smushed, because guess what? It's going in a recipe that they're gonna cook down. Yeah, you can freeze them, throw them over ice cream. You can do this over here so I'm catching the juice at least. Going to break those off, take those pits out. I'm going to continue with those, and then I'm going to just chop them up, and we're going to measure out 6 cups. All right, so these are also calling for finely chopped peaches, like the onions and that. So I'm just basically going to run a knife through them. I am, as I'm pitting these and taking the pits out, they are smushing up a little bit. Like I said, I'm not concerned about that. These aren't for canning peaches. These are just for a barbecue sauce, which is going to be diced up anyhow. I'm doing it over here, as you can see, like just pulling. Well, that fell on the floor. I'll get that afterwards. These peaches are super duper juicy, and I'm also going to lift this board up and drain some of that juice in. I don't want to lose that. That's all flavor. So there we go. Make sure I don't do that and throw them on the floor. Throw that pit out. Give your hands a quick wash. There we go. I'm going to turn my hands off, and find my big knife here, one of my big knives, and literally I'm just gonna chop through. I might have to do a few of these at a time. Maybe put them in a bowl on the side, because this is gonna make for a very large batch here. So I'm just gonna slide those aside. My kitchen counter's nice and clean. So literally just chop, 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 chop. Fine chop, just like I did before. Just run your knife through them. To get a fine chop on these. You don't want it completely mushy, but you just want little pieces, because it is going to cook down into sort of a jam-like consistency. It is a barbecue sauce, so a couple tiny little flecks of bigger peach aren't the end of the world, but you don't want too large. So let me just show you the size I'm going to do, and we'll see what the consistency comes out like. So that's basically, you can see here, they're like just little small pieces. So I'm going to continue to chop these till we get to 6 cups. Okay, so I actually had to do a few more of these peaches, because I didn't quite have enough. So you can see there, that's just about 5 cups. So I'm going to get this measured out and finish these up for you. All right, so I have exactly 6 cups of finely diced peaches. So you can see those there, they're finely chopped, which is exactly what we want. So when we cook this, it'll cook it all down. I'm going to add this now to all of my other ingredients. There we go. Shake it all out. I'm going to give this a good stir, and then I'm going to get this on the stove. And we're going to cook this down. So we want to stir this all up. Honey on the bottom is stuck a little bit, but that's okay. We want to get that stirred in. Stir it as best as you can. And we'll get this moved over to the stove. Okay, so I'm all set to cook up this Zesty peach barbecue sauce. Giving this a good stir. There's a little bit of honey still stuck in the bottom, but that's coming off. So I'm going to put this on a medium high heat. Let me just double check this recipe here. This says to put a boil over medium high heat. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to reduce it and stir it frequently until thickened. And they said to the consistency within commercial barbecue sauce, which is about 25 minutes. So I'm going to do this is on a number 8, which is the medium high for me. And I'm going to cook this. I want to make sure all the sides are scraped down. We're going to get all of that in. And I'm just going to continue to stir this until it comes to a full boil. And then I'll bring it back and we'll turn it down and simmer it until we get it to the consistency that we want. Okay, so this is to a boil. There's going to be a little bit of foam on the top, but I'm not worried about that. That will cook down into there. So we're going to keep this going. Let's see here. So you get a little bit of a boil around the outside. So we're going to keep this, and we want to keep this at a simmer. So we're going to let this go. I'm going to continue to cook down, and let me just turn this temperature. I'm going to turn this temperature to about medium now. And we're going to let that go, and it says here to cook about 25 minutes. So I'm going to put a timer on for 25 minutes. There we go. And we're going to see what consistency we get. So I might actually turn it down a little bit more. So I'll do a medium-low. We just want to keep it simmering so it's a little bubble. Right now it's pretty heavy, but that's at the beginning. So I'll just continue to stir this. I don't have to stir it every second, but I'm going to stir it periodically. And we will come back. This is the consistency that we want. In the meantime, again, I have another pot of water on. I'm bringing it up to a boil, but I'm going to turn it down to lower when it gets to a boil. And I'm going to be processing this Zesty peach barbecue sauce in there. So I will see you in a short bit, about 25 minutes, when all of this is set to go. All right there. So this Zesty peach barbecue sauce has been simmering. I actually did it for about 30 minutes. And it's getting finally, I think, very close to the consistency. They said a thin commercial barbecue sauce. I also find this is pretty chunky still, which I don't want it quite that chunky. So I've done I'm going to do two things. One is I did try it already, and honestly, I found it a little too spicy. So we can do one of two things, because I've already put 2 teaspoons of that in. It's not like crazy spicy. You can certainly eat it, and it might mellow a bit when you cook it on something. I'm just going to take that off here. I'm going to try, make sure you blow on that. That's better. What I did is I added in, for myself, I did another 1/4 cup of honey. And I added in a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, just to sweeten it a little bit more. The other thing I want to do, so flavor-wise, I have it perfect. If you don't like too much of a kick, you want to maybe just try 1 teaspoon of the pepper flakes when you do your original recipe. I'm also going to use my handy dandy hand blender, and I want to just pulse this a little bit. I do want a few chunks. I don't want too much. But basically what this does is you can see this is pureeing it down a little bit. I have this plugged in my wall, so hopefully I'll have to stir around a little here because this doesn't quite reach. So I'm just going to blend that through. I think that for me is good enough. Let's see, I'll shake that off. Get that over back to my counter. Sorry about the camera work here. And you can see here now, this is a much thicker looking sauce, which is more like the commercial one they're talking about. Does have some lumps in it, but not as much. It's much smoother. So I'm going to take this off the heat, and we're going to get this in the jars. All right, so I brought this down to a level hopefully you can see. Now this recipe calls for, it says it makes 8 8-ounce jars, which these are 250 milliliters or 8-ounce jars, whatever you want to put it. I'm going to start here. I also am going to debubble, so I have a handy dandy plastic chopstick. I'll use your debubbler, and we're going to fill these to about 1/2 inch of headspace. So each of these will probably take one really good filled up ladle, and I'm going to go to the 1/2 inch of headspace. So let me show you what that looks like. So you're going to see right here 1/2 inch of headspace, and if you pick that up, let me show you here, that's just above that second. You can go a little bit higher if you want, but I like to do it. So somewhere between that first line here and the second line, and I want to be sure that that's where my level is. So I'm going to continue to fill these jars, and you can watch along if you like. And let's see how many we get out of this. Perfect. Let's see what we got. So this is going to be delicious. I think this is going to be really nice on things like shrimp, maybe some chicken, ribs. Don't know if it'd be nice on beef, but it'd be really great with maybe a pulled pork. There's lots of things you can do this with. So let me finish jarring these up, and we'll come back and we're ready to put the caps on. Okay, so I ended up with 7 jars of this Zesty peach barbecue sauce, and with the liquid, most likely you don't need to do for bubbles, but guess what? I do them all anyhow. I'm just being safe that there's no major bubbles in there. Let's press the stir. So I got 7 jars. The reason I probably got 7 is because I cooked this a little bit longer than the recipe called for, but I want to be sure that I'm getting a decent consistency with it. Now what we want to do is I'm going to take my handy dandy cloth, my clean cloth. I'm going to soak it in vinegar. Squeeze a little bit of that out because I don't want vinegar in it, even though I have vinegar in the recipe. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to kind of cup it over. Hope you can see that all right. And I'm going to wipe the rims. What I'm doing is getting a little bit on the inside and a little bit on the outside. Again, we just want to do this so we can clean the rims. We don't want anything that's going to ride up underneath that lid. And we're going to do that. So I'm going to continue with these. I just want to show you the reason for doing the wiping of the jars. If you look here, and I want to focus in on my thing, you can see along the rim here, there's some little sticky bits. Okay? So once I wipe with a clean cloth with some vinegar and I go around the edges like that again, this also gets the outside in case you've dripped anything, because sometimes we drip. We're going to go along there, and let's take another look at that. So you want to be sure that entire rim all the way around super clean. We don't want anything on there. That helps the seal. Okay, and we're going to now take our lids. We're going to put these lids on, like so. Use whatever jar lids come with your jars originally. After that, my recommendation would be using 4 jars, F-O-R-J-A-R-S. I've bought aftermarket jar lids and have not been happy with them. I found that almost every batch of anything I do, 1 or 2 jars doesn't seal. And that's fine if you want to give some stuff away, but if you're doing a small batch of 6 jars and you've lost 2 because, I mean, they're not bad, but 2 don't seal, and maybe it's something that, you know, you wanted to keep all those jars for yourself, you can't necessarily use 2 jars of them. I'm not going to use 2 jars of peach jelly, in a week or 2 that I would keep it in my fridge. But if you do have 1 jar that doesn't seal for whatever reason, pop it in your fridge once it comes to room temperature so it's not cooling too quickly. You also don't want to get any foodborne illnesses by having anything too hot go into a cold fridge. And yeah, but this looks like this is going to be delicious. Absolutely can't wait to try it. So now what I'm doing is I'm finishing again just a hand tight on the lid. You don't want them, yanked or crammed down. And I'm going to take these jars now. I've got 7, and I'm going to put them in I'm using my pressure canner pot. It doesn't really matter which pot you use, but I'm going to pop them in here, have the water simmering for a short bit. So again, hot product into a hot canner. We're going to want to have these covered with water. We're going to bring it to a boil, and we're going to process them until 15 minutes. So we want a 15-minute processing time. Again, this brings the temperature up to food safe. You're going to boil it. It's going to boil the contents inside, and we're going to let them go for 15 minutes. So let me get the rest of these in. I'll show you where we need to be for coverage for water. I think we might be okay. I did make sure we had a fair amount in here. Might have to add a little bit of water, but that's okay. So there we go. So these are, there you go. These are just barely covered in water. So I'm going to take a little bit of water from my kettle, and I'm going to make sure they're at least, there you go, 1/2 inch to 1 inch covering. So I'm going to let these come to a boil, and then I'm going to boil them for 15 minutes, and we'll come back. Okay, so the timer just went off on this spicy peach relish. So I let them boil for, I think it was 15 minutes. So I'm going to take these all out. I'm just going to put them in with the other jars, and I'll show you as we finish these up. All right, so I've got all of these out, and as they cool, the buttons will pop down, which they actually have on some of these already. So we just want to be sure that they get a good tight seal. There we go. I got 7 jars of this jam, so I'm very, very happy with that. I hope you've had fun following along, and you join the channel if you haven't already. Pass along to your friends. Hit that reminder button to get videos. And you have a great day. Happy summer. Happy barbecuing. I hope you try this and try this with some barbecue. When I do some next time, I'll show you what I do with some of my canned products, and at least you'll get an idea what we're looking at. Well, hope you have a great day. Enjoy, and we will chat soon.